Welcome to the Deep Dive. We're diving into 5D thinking today. It's a new approach to teaching and learning, and it might totally change how we see the world. Our main source is 5D Thinking for Transformative Teaching. It's a guidebook by Dr. Nakati Aden, ready to dive in.
Absolutely. The really cool thing is that 5D thinking tries to fix something that a lot of people feel. It's that disconnect between science and faith, especially in education. And Dr. Aden says this is super important for the Muslim community.
Okay, I'm curious already. What causes that disconnect? Are science and religion just naturally against each other?
Well, Dr. Aden says it's more about how education systems work, even Islamic ones. They're influenced by a secular worldview. It's like this unspoken rule that you have to explain everything with material causes, nature and chance, almost like a secular trinity that runs this show.
So it's not science itself, it's the way it's presented.
Exactly. It's like explaining how you grew a delicious apple, but you never mentioned the farmer, the one who planted the tree and took care of it. Secular science often just looks at the physical stuff, like photosynthesis and soil nutrients, but it doesn't think about a creator.
That makes sense. You can get lost in the details and miss the big picture. So how does that secular approach affect education?
Dr. Aden says it leads to knowledge being boxed up. Science over here, faith over there. They never meet. And that separation can cause problems, like crises of faith, morality, even identity, especially for Muslims.
Wow, that's powerful. So if that secular lens is the problem, what's the solution?
Dr. Aden suggests a shift to what he calls a Tawhidi worldview. It's based on Tawhid, the oneness of God. It means seeing everything through that lens.
That sounds interesting, but also a little abstract. What would that look like in real life?
Imagine you're in traffic and you see a red light. The secular perspective just focuses on how it works, the electrical signals, the bulbs, how it keeps traffic flowing. But a Tawhidi worldview goes deeper. It considers the purpose, the intention behind it, the safety it gives, the order it creates, even the human ingenuity that made it possible. It's about seeing the Creator's hand in everything.
So it's about seeing a deeper meaning, not just what things are, but why they exist.
Exactly. And that's where 5D thinking comes in. It's a framework with 5 dimensions of thinking to bridge that gap between science and faith.
5 dimensions, that sounds complex. What are they and how do they work together?
Think of them as different lenses to look at the world. The first is analytical thinking. It's all about observing, exploring, gathering information, the basis of science.
It's about asking what, right? What is this? How does it work?
Exactly. But then we go further with analogical thinking. We connect the dots. We make comparisons, use analogies to understand big concepts. Like Dr. Aden uses the analogy of the universe as a palace to help students understand the idea of a divine architect.
I see. So we use familiar things to understand bigger ideas.
Yeah, you got it. And then we have critical thinking. We question assumptions, analyze information, evaluate the evidence. It's about being discerning, knowing fact from fiction, and forming your own conclusions.
Not just accepting things at face value, but really digging deeper.
Exactly. Now imagine taking all those observations, all that analysis, and connecting it to a higher purpose. You see the Creator in it all. That's meditative thinking.
So we're combining scientific understanding with spiritual awareness. But what about the 5th dimension?
The 5th is moral thinking. It's about finding ethical lessons, values, character-building principles from what we learn. This reminds us that knowledge isn't just facts. It's about becoming better people.
So 5D thinking is about more than just knowledge. It's about how we use it to live a good life.
Exactly. And Dr. Aden says this thinking isn't just for classrooms. It's for every part of life.
Okay, before we go too far, let's go back to the Tawhidi worldview. It seems really important to 5D thinking, but I think we need to understand it better.
You're right. It's the foundation. Maybe the best way to explain is with an example.
I love a good story.
Dr. Aden talks about having a really bad headache. Doctors couldn't explain it. They did tests, scans, everything, but they couldn't find a physical reason. From a purely secular view, you'd think the headache didn't exist. But Dr. Aden knew his pain was real, and this made him question the limits of a purely material worldview.
Wow, that's powerful. It reminds me of how we often ignore our own experiences if science can't explain them. But what does this have to do with a Tawhidi worldview?
It shows how important it is to trust our intuition and realize that sometimes experiences show us truths that science can't fully grasp. A Tawhidi worldview accepts that humans don't know everything and that ultimate knowledge is with the Creator.
So it's about humility, accepting that we don't have all the answers, and being open to truths beyond science.
You're getting it. And this is emphasized in how 5D thinking values experience. Dr. Aden says that personal experiences are important, especially of our bodies and emotions. They help us understand ourselves, the universe, and the Creator.
That's fascinating. So it's not just reading textbooks. It's about actively engaging with the world, learning through experience. I'm seeing how this could be really transformative.
It really can be. And to make this type of learning even better, Dr. Aden introduces this amazing concept. It's the universe as a Quran-e-Kabir, a giant Quran. The idea is that just like the Quran is God's word, the universe itself is a revelation through creation.
Wow, that's powerful. So instead of seeing the universe as just stars and planets, 5D thinking wants us to see it as a message from God, with signs and symbols.
Exactly. It builds on the work of Swed Nursi, a Muslim scholar who really focused on this concept. Both Dr. Aden and Nursi tell us to read this giant Quran. Through exploring science, we find moral lessons and understand God better.
So every discovery, every law of physics, every detail in nature, it's all a message from the Creator. That's amazing.
It is. And it brings a whole new meaning to science. But 5D thinking doesn't stop there. It also looks at us as humans. And the idea of fitra, our natural disposition in Islam.
Okay, fitra is new to me. What does it mean? How does it fit in with 5D thinking?
Think of it this way. Have you ever felt like you're fighting with yourself? You want to do the right thing, but it's easier to do what's tempting. That struggle is fitra. It's the part of us that wants good and truth, even when we mess up.
So it's like an inner compass, pointing us towards what's right, even if we don't always follow it.
Exactly. Understanding fitra is important. It helps us deal with those inner struggles and make choices that match who we really are. 5D thinking wants us to think about our fitra, to see where we might be off track, and work on living a more balanced life.
That's deep. It's like we need to look at ourselves honestly, but how do we do that? Does 5D thinking have any tools for that?
It does.
Yeah.
One of the key tools is self-reliance theory, or SRT. It's interesting because it's different from self-determination theory, which is used a lot in psychology.
I'm listening. What's the difference? What makes SRT unique?
Well, self-determination theory, or SDT, focuses on individual freedom. It says you're fulfilled when you make your own choices, when you're in control. But SRT turns that around. It says we need eternity and a higher power. In this case, God.
So it's not about denying our individuality. It's about realizing we need help.
Yeah.
That there's something bigger than us.
Exactly. Realizing that.
Yep.
Understanding our place in a bigger plan makes us more humble and balanced. It challenges the idea of being self-made and encourages being grateful and connected.
I can see how that would feel freeing. Instead of having to do everything yourself, you have support from something bigger. It's like those phrases you hear a lot in Islam.
Inshallah, mashallah, alhamdulillah.
Yes. They're all about acknowledging a higher power, accepting God's will, and being thankful.
You got it. Those phrases aren't just words. They reflect the Tawhidi worldview. They remind us that we don't do everything on our own, and that real fulfillment comes from following God's plan.
That's beautiful. It's like going from me-focused to soul-focused.
Exactly. And that shift changes everything. How we see the world, how we treat others, how we face challenges. It's realizing that every experience, even the hard ones, is part of a bigger journey with God.
So 5D thinking is more than learning. It's a way of life.
You could say that. It's weaving the Tawhidi worldview into everything. Our relationships, our work. And Dr. Aden has some practical advice for education.
Let's talk about that. How does this work in the classroom? Does Dr. Aden suggest any specific methods?
He does. One key thing is an integrated curriculum. It goes beyond the usual subjects we're used to.
So instead of separate classes for math, science, history, it's about connecting them and seeing how they relate.
Exactly. Breaking down those walls.
Yeah.
And showing how knowledge is all connected. And experiential learning is central.
You mean hands-on activities, experiments, field trips?
Yes. He suggests things like gardening, cooking, even building with Legos to help students really connect with what they're learning.
Legos, that's interesting. How does building with Legos teach kids about math or science?
Think about it. Building with Legos takes planning, problem solving, understanding space, following instructions. Those are all math and science skills. But it goes beyond that.
How so?
Dr. Aden says, connect building a Lego house to bigger ideas like architecture, engineering, even the universe as a God-made palace. Use those hands-on experiences as a way to understand abstract ideas.
So use hands-on activities to get them curious, and then connect that to a bigger picture, a cosmic picture. Make learning come alive, not just memorizing from a textbook.
Exactly. And that's where the 5 dimensions of 5D thinking come in.
Okay, let's go over those again. What are they, and how would they work in a 5D classroom?
Sure. The first is analytical thinking. That's where students start observing, exploring, asking those what questions.
So with Legos, the analytical stage is about looking at the pieces, figuring out how they fit, maybe trying different designs.
Exactly. Then they move to analogical thinking. They might compare their Lego creation to real buildings or see how different architectural styles have changed.
I see. So they connect their experience to history and culture.
Right. Then comes critical thinking. They might analyze how strong their Lego building is, look at the good and bad of different designs, even debate ethical choices in architecture.
Wow, that's deep. You're really making them think.
That's the idea. And then we have meditative thinking. This might be reflecting on the creativity in both Lego design and real architecture, seeing the beauty and order in the world and connecting that to God.
So it's about taking a moment to appreciate creation. I like that. But what about moral thinking? How does that fit in with Legos?
That's where we ask the big questions. What are an architect's responsibilities? How can buildings be sustainable and good for the environment? How can we use creativity to make the world better?
It's amazing how Legos can lead to such deep discussions. 5D thinking really seems to involve the whole person.
You got it. That's why Dr. Aden believes 5D thinking isn't just for students. It's for everyone. It's a way to learn for your whole life, a way to approach anything with curiosity and a desire to connect to something bigger.
It's like we're becoming lifelong explorers, always looking for knowledge and wisdom. This has been so interesting. I'm seeing learning in a whole new way. But before we wrap up, I'm curious about something Dr. Aden mentions. The idea of reading 3 books.
Yes. The book of the self, the book of the universe, and the book of the Quran. It's a beautiful way to show how knowledge is connected and the different paths to understanding.
I love that. What does it mean to read those 3 books?
Reading the book of the self is about looking inside, being self-aware, understanding our strengths and weaknesses. It's deciphering our own story.
It's like that Fitra concept again, knowing our inner compass and living in a way that's true to ourselves.
Exactly. Reading the book of the universe is about science, observing, experimenting, analyzing, trying to understand how the world works.
So it's about appreciating how amazing creation is and seeing the design and everything.
Precisely. And reading the book of the Quran is about diving into God's word, finding guidance and wisdom beyond what we can understand on our own.
It's connecting with a higher purpose, knowing we rely on the Creator, and finding a moral and spiritual guide.
You got it. And 5D thinking is great because it tells us to be open-minded, to be curious and respect all 3 books for the knowledge they hold.
It's like we're given 3 lenses.
To see the world. Each one shows us something different. And when we combine them, we get a bigger, more complete picture of ourselves and the universe.
Beautifully said. 5D thinking isn't about choosing one book. It's about seeing how they're connected, finding the place where science, experience, and spirituality meet. This has been amazing. I'm starting to see how 5D thinking could change everything, not just education, but our whole approach to life. It's about so much more than just knowing facts. It's about becoming wiser, more compassionate, and feeling connected to something bigger.
I agree. And this is just the beginning. Dr. Aden's book gives us a map. But the real adventure starts when we take these ideas and use them in our own way.
And Dr. Aden isn't keeping this all to himself. He wants everyone to be part of the 5D thinking movement.
You're right. He has a website with lots of resources. And you can even become a 5D author to share your own thoughts and experiences.
That's great. It shows how collaborative this is. It's not about one person having all the answers. It's a community learning and growing together.
Exactly. That's what makes this so exciting. 5D thinking isn't strict rules. It's an invitation to a lifelong journey of discovery.
And who knows what amazing things we'll find along the way. This has been such a thought-provoking deep dive. I'm feeling inspired to learn more.
I'm happy to hear that. And that's a perfect way to lead into our final thoughts. Imagine if we saw the world differently, not just as it is, but as part of God's plan, like a giant book with signs and messages. How would that change how we learn? How would it change our lives? Think about that as you keep exploring and learning.
That's a powerful thought. It makes me realize how often I just go through the motions. I focus on everyday things and forget to look deeper, forget to see the bigger picture.
It happens to all of us. We get busy and lose that sense of wonder. But 5D thinking helps us get it back, like we're kids again, seeing everything as a chance to learn and grow.
It's like we're given new glasses to see the beauty and connection in everything.
And everyone can have those glasses. You don't need a degree or special training to use 5D thinking.
So where do we start? What's one thing we can do right now?
Be grateful. Start each day by noticing the good things you have, big or small. A cup of coffee, a sunrise, your family and friends.
It's about focusing on what we have, not what we don't. And remembering that those good things are gifts.
Exactly. Gratitude opens our hearts and minds. It helps us see how much we already have. And from there, it's easier to see God's hand in everything.
It's like tuning our minds to a different channel, one that's playing messages of beauty and meaning.
I like that. And the more we see things this way, the more natural it becomes. We see how everything's connected. We see how things happen for a reason. We see how we're guided and supported.
It's like we're writing our own stories, but working with God to make them amazing.
That's a great way to put it. And remember, you're not alone on this journey. Connect with others who are exploring these ideas too. Share what you're learning, support each other, and learn from each other's experiences.
It's powerful to be with people who think like you.
It is. It energizes you, gives you new ideas, and creates a sense of purpose.
Maybe by having these conversations and sharing our 5D perspectives, we can help change how people think, move towards a more connected way of understanding the world.
That would be incredible. I think Dr. Aiden would be happy to see that.
Me too. This has been an amazing conversation. I'm leaving with so much to think about.
I'm glad. For anyone listening, if you want to learn more, read Dr. Aiden's book, visit his website, and maybe even join the 5D thinking community. There's a whole world out there waiting for you.
This is just the start of our exploration.
It is. Learning is a lifelong adventure. And with 5D thinking as our guide, we can approach it with wonder, with purpose, and with a connection to God's wisdom.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. We hope you enjoyed it.
It was my pleasure.
Keep exploring, keep asking questions, and keep looking at the world through your 5D lens. Until next time.